Okay, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, and mabuhay wherever you are here in the part of the world. And whatever time zone you're currently in, I welcome you to the 21st webinar session organized by this amazing scholarly community, the Qualitative Research Connect. It is amazing that we have reached this far providing free webinars to qualitative research enthusiasts. I am Dr. Maricela A. Gomez, a faculty of the Eastern Visayas State University, Philippines, and a member of the Qualitative Research Connect. I will be your moderator for this great session of learning. This webinar session promises insightful learning that will make the conduct of qualitative research better and more meaningful. Specifically for this session, we will learn about qualitative research in multilingual setting. We will get to know some of its challenges and practices from an internationally renowned qualitative researcher. But before I call in our distinguished resource speaker, I'd like to share some few announcements. This webinar is recorded so that you can watch this again and probably use this as a teaching material if you are teaching qualitative research. I am teaching research and I am using the webinar sessions that are recorded in our Facebook page, and I let them use it and do some comments, and I ask questions based on the webinar. That's one resource material that we can use to our students. So this recording will be available at the QLRC Facebook page and at the www.qlrconnect.com within 48 hours after the webinar. And likewise, certificates will be given to the members by taking a screenshot of your attendance to this webinar and send it to the QLRC email address. And I am also encouraging those who are not members yet to register and become a member of this community where we grow together as researchers and make a good difference by doing qualitative research. Likewise, kindly make sure that your microphones are muted so as not to disrupt the speaker. And also, at the end of the talk, we have a time for the most awaited part, the question and answer. So type in the chat space your questions and I will read them after the talk of our resource speaker. So at this point, I am now excited to introduce our amazing speaker. So if it is possible with you, can you give me a thumbs up or any emoticon to show that you are ready to listen? Can I show a thumbs up or any emoticon just to let me see if you are ready to listen? Whoa, thank you, Dr. Lemon. Thank you for the others who have, and also Dr. Patricia, thank you for that emoticon. So at this point, we are privileged to have with us now Dr. Safari Wambaleka. Dr. Wambaleka is a qualitative research scholar who is passionate about spreading qualitative research worldwide. As a result, he published several books, book chapters, and peer-reviewed articles, and he has delivered more than 100 of training sessions and conference presentations to promote qualitative research. He is one of the board members of the Qualitative Research Connect. So friends, let us welcome with a warm virtual applause our resource speaker, Dr. Safari Wambaleka. Dr. Wambaleka, the virtual floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gomez. I wish Dr. Gomez would just continue because this is so inspiring and energetic. I wish you'd be the one to just present this today or this evening in the Philippines. But thank you so much for your introduction. I think those introductory remarks were very clear and we appreciate you very much. And Dr. Gomez is one of our board members in the QLRC, and I think we should actually even applaud for her because she started just 2 months ago as a campus director of Eastern Visayas State University, a campus of 4,000 students. So we are very proud of you, Dr. Gomez, and we are very honored to have you as member of the QLRC Advisory Board. I want to start with a personal experience that I had. One of the reasons why I love the Philippines so much, it's not only because that's where my professional career really took off. I moved to the Philippines to 2011, and I was there until 2019. Some of you we've met, others like Dr. Maria and Dr. Patricia, we met in the Philippines for the very first time. It's a very interesting. In fact, Dr. Maria, even if we are both here in the United States, we have never met here in the United States, I believe. So it's interesting. There are so many beautiful memories in the Philippines. As soon as I moved to the Philippines, I would say about 4 months later, I was invited. My family was invited to a party in Manila. We lived just outside of Manila, about I would say 30, 40 miles away from the capital city. And so this party was in Manila. I had to drive in Manila. And at that time, yes, Google Map was there, but it was not that accurate yet. And I discovered quickly that a number of streets, by the way, just a full disclosure, I love the Philippines. Everybody who knows me, when I talk about the Philippines, many times I forget that I'm not even Filipino. Only when people start looking at me, say, wait a minute, I must be a foreigner, but I just feel like right at home. So just full disclosure. So whatever I say is not to belittle anybody or any place in the Philippines. Anyways, at that time, some streets, either the signs were covered by branches or they went missing. And so when it says you're going to turn on this street, you get there, you're looking, you don't see the name of the street. And we had just arrived from the United States, where every street happens to have a sign where everywhere you're going to turn. And so at a certain point, we could not move. In fact, I didn't have data on my phone because things were just I didn't know how to do that. So what I had done, I had used a hybrid modality. I did Google Maps at home and I printed everything, turn left, turn right, and so on, how many minutes, how long it will take before I get to the next one. And so at a certain point, we are in this maze of the biggest city, one of the biggest cities in Asia, Manila, 24, 27 million people. That's how large the Manila metropolitan Manila is. And so we went to the old fashioned way of dealing with the instructions. I started going to gas stations asking for direction. I'm looking for this street. And as I went from one street to another, from one gas station to another, they would look at me and you could see that somebody is not very sure. And they would just tell me, and some of you have heard this experience from some of my trainings, and they would just tell me, go derecho, derecho. For those who don't know Filipino or Spanish, derecho simply means, go straight. Derecho. So I just look at this, the hand where it's going. I said, it's got to be this one. So I would drive and go derecho. And when I get to that point, it's like, well, this is taking way too long to find the other turn. I ask again, and the other person just points me to the opposite direction, go derecho. And I found myself going derecho in 4 different directions. I quickly realized that the derecho was definitely not probably right. There was most likely some linguistic communication. It was not just the vocabulary, but there was something hidden behind that. Basically, because of the culture, being polite means not saying no, or not, you don't say that you don't know, or you don't say no to somebody in the Filipino culture. You just say derecho, hoping with that when this person goes derecho, he's going to find somebody there who's going to give the right direction. And that day, I learned one of my first few words that derecho doesn't necessarily mean go straight. It may actually mean, the nuance may mean, I actually don't know, just keep going. Or maybe somewhere you're going to find somebody who can help you. So today we're talking about doing qualitative research in multilingual lingual setting. And if I was doing qualitative research, I would have said the ratio means, and I didn't know the language, I would say the ratio means I don't know the ratio means straight, and I would write interpretation. Everybody points you to the direction that you should go straight. That's what I'm going to write in my data analysis. But does it mean this person was telling me to go straight? No, it was a strategy to let me go, to get out without offending me, without looking like somebody who doesn't know what they are doing. So let's look at some of the challenges. What are the challenges that we face? And what are the best practices in dealing with these specific issues? First of all, you'll find that in some countries, including the United States, we have several languages that we deal with. I know. In the US, we say it's English, we push even some different things. That's a discussion for another day. But we have several languages here, especially that we have so many migrants who come with their languages, and within their communities, they're speaking their languages. But we have countries that officially have several languages. Like I happened to benefit from my days in the Philippines. I believe, was it 82 or 182? Somewhere, probably 82 languages that are in the Philippines. And so the vast linguistic diversity means researchers and the participants often have different first languages. You may find students or participants in the same community, but they are speaking several languages. I know for those who are joining, for example, from Africa, most African countries have several languages. I would think of Nigeria, for example, that has 600 languages. I think about Asia, a country like Indonesia, they have 700 languages. You'll find that even in Spanish speaking countries, I remember when I was invited by Dr. Patricia Lopez Estrada to speak in Costa Rica, her country. She and her husband revealed to me that there are other languages within Costa Rica, and here in my mind it was only Spanish. But so this is a phenomenon that you find everywhere, and we cannot assume that everybody will be able to speak the same language. Therefore, it leads to communication barriers. We have language differences. This can complicate data collection, data analysis, and interpretation in qualitative research because each language will come with things. It's not just, one word and the translation is the one word in the other language. No, each word can mean many different things. I remember when I was still learning English, and my professor said it rained cats and dogs. I spent quite, and we didn't have Google back then. I was trying to understand how does it rain cats and dogs? That doesn't. Are you telling me cats and dogs are flying from the sky and falling on the? I mean, it just could not make sense. And of course, you look at Dr. Maria, who's a native speaker. It's like, oh, come on, everybody knows what it means, raining cats and dogs. No, because if I try to translate that to my mother tongue, it just does not make sense at all. Everybody who speaks another language try to translate literally rain, cats, and dogs. You'll find that it just does not make any sense whatsoever. So you find that we are in this global academic setting where there's a global, there exists a global linguistic diversity and English dominant academic publication as well. That is another issue because many institutions, universities, they will expect people to publish in English, for example. I remember last time the first time, was it the first time? I think the first time that I spoke in Portugal. That's the first time actually I met Dr. Patricia. She had traveled there to present at a qualitative research conference. I met this guy, this scholar who had come from Paris, France, who was presenting there. And it was interesting because we could both speak French. And so immediately we just picked on French, and although my French is rusty now, and we started speaking French. And I said, so are you going to present in French? Because in that conference, they allowed people to present in English, French, or Portuguese, and I think Spanish as well. He said, no, I have to present in English. I said, why? But you have an option to present in French. He said, no, because in France, if you want to become a professor, like full professor, you have to show that you have presented in English. I never knew that French, and I know I can boldly speak about this because my early academic life was in French, that French people, academic people, they are proud of French. I never imagined that they will say to become a full professor, to grow your ranking, you have to actually present and publish in English. And so you'll find yourself doing research in a specific language, but also publishing or presenting in English because that is required. So you find the struggles that come, for example, here, some of the things I've heard. What it says in the local language is much stronger than the translation. If I had said the ratio means go straight, that's not exactly what it was. Over the years in the Philippines, after that experience, whenever somebody said derecho, I didn't go derecho. Interestingly, earlier this year, I was in the Philippines. I spoke in many different universities. Some of you probably met. And I had a meeting with a friend in Manila, again in Manila, and we were supposed to meet in a mall with his family. He is actually a member of QLRC, and I couldn't find the store, or I mean, the restaurant where we were supposed to meet. So I asked, in the Philippines, you always want to ask the security guards. They are the ones who know everything. Don't ask anybody else, the security guards. And as soon as I asked him, I said, I'm trying to find this restaurant. He said, he looked around and then he said, Derecho. I smiled. I really smiled because I knew that he was telling me I don't really know. And so I didn't go, I didn't follow the Derecho. I just went to somebody else to ask. So what it says in the local language, you'll find people say, no, it means really something bigger than, it means something more than that. The research participants could not express themselves well because my interview was in English. You'll see this a lot of times because, hey, I don't know the local language and I'm interviewing in English because I don't know the local language. These quotes reflect the challenges of multilingual qualitative research. And interestingly, some of our Filipino scholars that you have here, they may come from a place where the language or the dialect in another town where they are going to conduct this study, they may understand to some language, but they do not really understand the language that people are speaking there. You don't have to travel 500 miles or 500 kilometers to find that. It may just be something like 20 miles or 30 miles. It's already another language that people are speaking. This is complicated with non-verbal communication that we find. We have paralinguistic cues, for example, the tone of voice, the volume, the speech speed, all these reveal emotions and offering implicit data beyond words. And in each language, they have a different meaning. For example, in the north of the Philippines, I'm going to pick on the Philippines a lot because that's where my professional life has, I've spent the longest time in my professional life. People who come from the north, they tend to speak in a higher volume in a normal conversation. And it doesn't mean that they are excited, it doesn't mean that they are angry. And yet, if you find people from the central part of the Philippines, somebody may be angry, but they're speaking soft. And you think that they are not actually upset. And something that I learned from one of my students in the Philippines, she was coming from the south of the Philippines. If you are asking, you go to somebody's house and they're eating, and say, please come, let's eat. In the south of the Philippines, you don't just, if you are not invited ahead of time, you don't immediately dig in because somebody has said, just let's eat. You have to wait until at least 3 times. The first time they say, let's eat, it's like, hey, hi, what's up? So don't jump on it, because if you do, it's like, hey, why is he eating? We didn't actually invite. They say again, come on, let's eat. Say, no, I'm fine, or something. The third time they say it, then you know they actually mean that. So these are things that are behind this. Although the statement is clear, but the culture is telling you, hey, slow down. We have nonverbal communication like body language, facial expressions, and gestures. These provide deeper insights into the participants' response. We have cultural observations, just like that example I have just given you from the student from south of the Philippines. Observing cultural behaviors helps researchers detect inconsistencies and gain understanding. And so we cannot just take words at face value. And this is the reason why, even if I understand the language, maybe it happens to be my second language, I still need to learn the culture to be able to understand what people are communicating. It was funny. It was quite interesting for me to discover just 2 years ago. I was collecting data in the Philippines, and I decided to have a cultural orientation. Even though I had lived there in total, putting my 2 times of living there together, I had lived in the Philippines for 9 years and a half. It was interesting as the two scholars started drilling me about how to deal with people, how to interact with people when I'm collecting data, especially when it came to leadership, administration, because I had to meet with administrators. And I quickly realized that I must have offended people several times, even though I thought I was doing well when I was living there. Because, for example, before I collect data from a university, I had to make sure that I met the president or the vice president, the dean, and others. While here in the United States, if I had gotten already the permission from the university, I don't need. In fact, it would be waste of people's time if I try to meet with them for me to collect data. I just go and collect data from the members. I mean, from the participants that I have recruited. And so I quickly realized that in the past, if I had an activity, I just went to the people who were involved in uh, in my activity, not to go to their superiors. And so all these things are things that we have to be aware of. And every single culture has their own reality that may not be captured in just the language that we are dealing with. I have classified this in three major challenge categories, and I'm going to give you the reference. We can look at that, but it's in a book that hopefully your university has. We have qualitative research comprehension problems. For example, non-native speakers of English struggle to internalize complex qualitative research concepts in English. And this is one of the reasons why we have this QLRC, because we try to break down these concepts so that even within the qualitative research knowledge, we are able to understand that. And this is why I have been encouraging people that we should publish qualitative research textbooks within your languages, especially if they are major languages, so that people can understand that in their languages. We have limited English proficiency, researchers facing difficulties articulating findings and leading to publication challenges and even journal rejections, not because their studies are not well, they are not done well, but because uh, they are trying to communicate these things in a second language. And I wish the journals, they will understand, those that are publishing English, when they see that an article is coming from a non-native speaking country, that they will be much more merciful. But on the other hand, of course, we can use now a lot of technology to improve certain things. We have native speakers of English that are conducting research in other places. This is a challenge, and I always find arrogance in this sometimes. And I think sometimes I caught myself as well, although I'm not a native speaker of English, where native speakers of English, and I'm not talking about Dr. Maria here. No, I'm not. Some native speakers of English, when they are out there, they will laugh at people who are trying to speak English. I say, oh, your English is broken. Wait a minute, you are in my country? I'm trying to accommodate you? And you think that this is funny that I'm not speaking fluently like you? I speak 3 or 4 other languages. How many languages do you speak? I've seen this personally happening. And I would catch myself sometimes almost laughing because it is a little funny how somebody is speaking English. But native speakers of English, they have to be courteous, obviously, when they are dealing with non-native speakers of English, because non-native speakers of English, they have their own languages. And let's guess what? We cannot even say one sentence in their language. And so we have to respect when I go somewhere, like when I was in Costa Rica and the people were accommodating me to speak in English, I was so happy. I was happy, and I would using a few Spanish words that I had so that they can see that I really love the Spanish language. But I just have limited vocabulary. I can understand a little bit more than I can speak. So that people see that you value them, and simply because they are not able to speak proper English, it doesn't mean that their intelligence is not strong. So when we are analyzing the data, when we're conducting qualitative research in settings like this, what should we do? Um, Literature shows that we need to interview in the first language if we know the language, because sometimes you may know, like Dr. Patricia knows both Spanish and English, so she can interview both in English and Spanish. Many of our colleagues here from the Philippines, they know English and 2 or 3, 4 other languages. I see Professor Rodney here joining us, I believe from Mexico. I know he can interview in English and in Spanish. So if you know the first language of the participants, it is good to interview with them in the first language. But if you do not know the first language and the participants can speak your language, and of course, that's what will happen. Like when I was doing the interviews in the Philippines, I made sure, because I didn't want to deal with the translations or an interpreter. And given that many people in the Philippines speak English, one of the selection criteria was to have people who can communicate efficiently in English. And so I ended up using English as a medium of interview, although it was not the mother tongue, it was not the first language of the people. So when you conduct interviews in the participants' most comfortable language, it gives authentic meanings. They are able to communicate deeper meaning of what they want to send. And the questions always come, should we transcribe then in that first language, or should we translate first and then transcribe? Um, Most scholars agree that we should transcribe and analyze in the first language if we know that first language, because then we are able to preserve the cultural nuances of what people wanted to communicate. Then you go to the interpretation. We need to interpret in a researcher's strongest language for optimal accuracy. And here, basically, as the researcher, you are now everything, you are making things yours. You are using your brain, the researcher as the instrument. This is where it comes to the highest level, as we always talk about it in qualitative research. And so you want to have to do your interpretation in in the language where you're strong, and of course would say in the language where you're going to publish, if you know that language. And most of us here know English and will most likely publish in English, so you want to do your interpretation in English at this point. But if you're going to publish in English and your English proficiency is not strong, then you still want to do your interpretation in the language where you're strong, and then eventually write in the target language where you're going to publish. If you're going to publish in English, then of course the report will have to be written in English. The final conclusions and the required publication, that is obviously a given that we don't have to ignore. How do we deal with the nuances? Again, every language has that. Every culture has that. And these come many times in the form of idiomatic expressions. And these, for those who come from a linguistic background, and I'm one of them, Dr. Patricia is one of them, and I know some of the people here who have a language teaching or language education background. We know that for every language, idiomatic expressions and prepositions are the hardest things to learn, because it's like they convey something that is not just surface meaning. So you have to look at power dynamics. This is the reason why, for example, as far as qualitative research is concerned, we do not interview two people who are in different power dynamics in the same focus group discussion, for example. But when it comes to language, the language reflects power structures. So you need to ensure participant comfort. If you come in as a professor interviewing in a small village somewhere, right there you say, well, I'm a professor such and such. I did a PhD in this and a master's in that. I have 3 master's degrees and I was a professor, a fellow in Cambridge University. Uh-oh. It's like, I'm very small here. I don't want to even speak. So we need to look into the power dynamics. We may also have people who are in high positions and they are going to say certain things because of the position that they are in. And this is the reason why we recommend multiple variation in sampling, for example, because then we're going to get people who are in a high position and a lower position, high power people and low power people, so that we can catch the more robust perspective of what is happening. And of course, the metaphors and the idioms or idiomatic expressions, yes, these will happen in most of the interviews that we have, because that is natural to all the languages. They may have indigenous terms, they may have metaphors. These can carry deep cultural meaning. And so sometimes people are trying to bring this, I saw this in some of the research studies that I did in the Philippines, where people will try to bring this to English. And as you're interviewing and you're interviewing somebody for example, in English, and English is their second language, they may make a statement that doesn't seem to make sense to you. It's because they are translating that in their brain from the mother tongue. And once that statement is done, I usually ask a follow-up question. Can you please elaborate on what you mean by this? So with that, you'll be able to get the cultural meaning of the metaphor that they are using. And sometimes these metaphors, they are so strong, they carry so much heavy weight for your qualitative study that you may end up introducing that in your data, in your reporting, and discussing what it means for that report. I mean, for that specific metaphor. The cultural context, of course, also affects the language. The different languages shape thought. For those who did linguistics, we know this, that language shapes thought, and thought. Yeah, I mean, language shapes culture, and the culture shapes the language as also as the same as language. The language shapes the thought. People think this the way their language is spoken. For example, in some cultures, there is no vocabulary for cousin because there's no such a thing as cousin. Your cousins are your brothers and sisters. So they will say, this is my sister from father such and such. This is my brother from father such and such, because they don't have that word. Some cultures don't have the word late because community is much more important. And so when you're trying to in cultures like that, when you try to emphasize people to be on time, it's like it just doesn't work because it's the language is influencing the thought itself. And of course, the nonverbal cue, communication extends beyond words, including gestures and body language. In fact, some communication experts say up to 70% of what we communicate is nonverbal. And interestingly, each language has various non-communication cues. In some cultures, if you look at somebody in the face, somebody who is in a higher position, it's disrespectful. Here in the United States, if I'm talking to you and you're a kid, I expect you to look me in the eye to show that you have nothing to hide and you are polite. But try that in Japan, that's a different story. If you're showing respect, you should not look somebody in high authority in the eyes. And so even if I say that I agree, this is the other thing that came up in our publication with my students in the Philippines. In northern part, near the capital city, if they say yes with the head up, it means really yes. If they say yes with the head down, it means no. And so many of us foreigners would always struggle when people say yes, but and they put the head down, and we never knew. We just took it as face value that it's yes, and that's it. But it was something else, and it took me years to understand what was happening. What are the quality criteria for multilingual qualitative research? First of all, we need credibility. That's something that we know. We need a clear alignment between data and analysis and the conclusions. We need what is known as resonance, where we have accurate representation of participants' lived experiences. This is what I and other people will call emic perspective. We take things from the participants' perspective. And of course, we have the emic, the ethic perspective, where the researcher brings in their perspective on what was said. We need originality, where we look at new contributions to knowledge with fresh insights or extended theories. And the last one here, usefulness. I always emphasize this. How useful is this to the participants' lives? What are the practical implications? What are the solutions to the problems that have come up in the study? So moving forward, and we're going to end here. What are some of the best practices? You need to foster collaboration when we're dealing with multicultural, multi-setting qualitative research studies. We need to partner with native speakers or non-native and non-native speakers to bridge the linguistic gaps when we are doing a study with people who are not from our linguistic background. We need to develop local standards for those who are experts on this platform. Please write on things that can help us. If you are in Mexico, what should we, if somebody who is not Mexican comes to do a study there, how should they approach linguistic issues and cultural issues? We need to establish qualitative research practices in local languages, especially when we are dealing with large communities that are sharing the language. Because if a language is spoken by 1,000 people only, that means those people probably speak the mainstream language. And so that may not be that useful, I may say. And you need to contribute globally, enable researchers to articulate findings and add to global scholarship. By publishing what is coming up in our linguistic background, we are able to inform people from outside there who do not speak our mother tongue. Effective multilingual quality research requires adaptable strategies, cultural sensitivity, and collaboration. We cannot do it alone. We may need an interpreter. We may need a translator. We may need to do research together with a native speaker of that language, of that culture, so that we are able to capture things more holistically than what we'll see at face value in multilingual study. So this has come from this chapter that you can find in this book. Some of you were contributors to this book. The book is called The Sage Handbook of Qualitative Research in the Asian Context. And I co-authored this book, Quality Research in a Multilingual Setting, Principles and Strategies. There you'll find we address several questions. It is much more elaborated as you deal with linguistic issues when we are dealing with qualitative research in a multilingual context. Well, thank you so much for your attention. I'm ready for questions.
Wow, Dr. Safari, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Wambaleka, for that excellent presentation on the best practices and challenges of doing qualitative research in multilingual setting. As you can see, you would see their virtual hearts, virtual clubs, even before I asked it, because I agree that they love your presentation and it was insightful sharing on this topic. And personally, as I listened to your presentation, again, it is emphasized that it is important that we not only focus on the language spoken, but also be conscious on the nonverbal cues to get the best interpretation of collected data. So thank you very much, Dr. Safari, for this insightful presentation. But before we go on to the Q&A, I encourage everyone to post a question here that I am going to read later. Before we go to the question and answer portion, I'd like to encourage everyone to invite more people to become member of our growing QLRC Facebook community. At present, the community is around 11,700 members, and I hope we can still invite more people. So encourage your friends and also to become members of the QLRC. I believe you could testify to the great advantage of being a member of this scholarly community. So kindly visit the www.qlrconnect.com. So I'd like to ask you the first question, Sir Safari. When participants naturally code switch, mixed languages during an interview, should the researcher transcribe and analyze the raw mixed text first, or should the entire interaction be immediately translated into the target language?
Interesting that you're asking a question of code switching, and that is something that I found in my research. But before I address that, if I may be allowed to introduce somebody this time, we have our former administrative assistant left us a few months ago because she got a new job. And so for the last 2 months, we've been looking for an administrative assistant. And I'm glad to inform you today that we have found somebody that we believe will do an excellent job in doing this. And I want to introduce to you just briefly, and then I'll ask her to probably say a word or two. Miss Ayana Antoine, she has spent over 20 years supporting students and making campus life meaningful in Trinidad and Tobago. That is somewhere around Central America. She was a registrar before moving to her current institution, where she is working as executive director of student affairs. She is all about creating spaces where students feel welcome and supported and inspired to grow, whether through advising, leadership opportunities, or just building a real sense of a community. I think that describes exactly the kind of person we want to help us grow here in the QLRC. Even with all her experience, she's always eager to learn more. Right now, she's especially interested in growing her expertise in qualitative research and is really excited about QLRC. She is a junior board member of QLRC, and I believe her excitement and willingness to serve will contribute to true effectiveness as administrative assistant with QLRC. And as of yesterday, Miss Antoine is our new administrative assistant, and you'll be receiving communication from her. Let's put our hands together for Miss Antoine, and if you can speak to us just briefly, Miss Antoine.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Dr. Safari, thank you so much for, I guess, for making me sound better than I am. Right? Guys, honestly, as Dr. Safari said, I am from Trinidad and Tobago, and I am simply excited to serve. I consider this a new opportunity, and with everything else, I like to tackle new opportunities straight on and forward. So I plan to do the same with this. And hopefully, I plan to get to know all of you or most of you. I look forward to that. And Dr. Safari and team, thank you again for providing the space, the avenue, and the opportunity for me to do just that. So looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Antoine. And right now, she is finishing her dissertation. She's working on her dissertation, and we can't wait to see her. All of us are invited, whether you like it or not. We're going to attend your final dissertation defense when that is done. And welcome to QLRC. It is a great honor to have you here as a member of our community. Going back to the question, yes, I saw that in my data personally. And as a non-native speaker of the languages where I was conducting my studies in the Philippines, of course, when I transcribed, I would have to get the meaning in English because I didn't know the word in the language where people were speaking. And I remember asking, I think a few times I asked Dr. Maricel to help me. I would send her a paragraph, say, Dr. Maricel, what does this word mean? And she would actually help me with that. She was always my my unpaid research assistant over the years because we had co-authored some chapters. I think we did one study together. We co-authored together, yes, and we have done a few uh, programs together. And so if you know the language where people are doing the code switching, for example, it's Spanish and English, somebody's mixing Spanish and English, and you happen to know both, then of course you should transcribe as it is, because sometimes they are using the other language because it is saying it much better. Anybody who speaks two languages knows that. Sometimes it's like, no, no, no. I like it in the other language. It's much stronger in that language, even if you know both languages. And so you'll transcribe in that language. But of course, when you report, you'll report only in one, because then you're reporting in the language that is the target language of the audience.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Safari, for that. I have a second question. In your experience, what is considered as a significant ethical dilemma that arises when collecting qualitative data in a language you do not fully speak?
I think the ethical dilemma, I think I would call it uh, ethical worry is the pride. That is a big, to me, that is the biggest thing. When you are interviewing, again, I'm going to take English because most of us are united in English, but many of us here speak other languages. And when you are interviewing people in English, and their English is broken English because, either they didn't study much or, whatever reason, and you feel like you are smarter because you can speak English, you can speak English fluently, and the participants are not able to articulate clearly, and you just feel like you are superior. To me, that is unethical. When I go to research participants, it's because I believe I will learn from them. They have something that I don't know. So I should be humble when I'm going out there. So I have to always remind myself that no, this person may not even have an elementary school education, but the fact that I have selected him or her as my participants because they have something that I don't know and I want to come and learn. So that should already put me in a place of humility that I need to respect them. I should, if they are talking to me in with the broken English, and that's the only way that we can communicate because I don't have an interpreter. I should be patient. I should not be say, okay, that one, actually, we don't call it that. You don't say deers in English. It's still deer in plural. No, this is not the place for that. Let them use the language whatever way they can. And if I'm doing my interview in in a place multilingual setting, and the people are mixing code switching, I cannot say, can you are a professor, how come you cannot just speak in English? No, because even at home, you'll find that even at home, they are mixing the two. And this is a major phenomenon actually in the Philippines for those who language studies. They will tell you that it is a major thing in the literature, in the research, that we have young children today, especially in the Manila area, who speak only in the code switching, and their brain doesn't know that they're speaking two different languages. That's what they know. Their brain is already wired like that. They cannot distinguish English and Tagalog because that's how, when they were born, that's exactly how it was, that they heard the two being mixed. And so their brain functions just exactly like that. You cannot tell them speak only English or speak only Tagalog. They will only function with that code switching. And so let's be humble, let's be respectful when we are conducting research in a multilingual setting. Let's be more tolerant.
Thank you, Sir Safari. I agree with what you have said. There are some questions also here. We from Sir Ismael Talili. His first question includes: what strategies can researchers adopt to avoid loss of meaning during translation, especially when dealing with untranslatable cultural concepts such as in Filipino words pakikisama and utang na loob?
All right, that's a good question. And Dr. Talili is one of our board members, and he is an expert in communication. I think he has a doctorate in communication. And so, definitely a relevant question here. This is where we need collaboration. We talked about that earlier. If you know that you're going to deal with a language that it will probably have a lot of cultural weight throughout the interviews, collaborate with somebody. Collaboration is much more celebrated now than ever before. And this is, I think, one of the reasons why I ended up publishing a lot with my colleagues in the Philippines, especially whenever there was something that needed. For example, the study I did with Dr. Gomez, it was dealing with funding from the government in the academic setting. And I knew that there were cultural things that are involved there that I had no clue about. But because she works for a state university, I knew she would have a lot more understanding of what was happening. And so, and yes, she contributed a lot. You can find that on Google. If you Google my name and her name and you put funding in higher education, you'll be able to download that article for free. And so collaborate for publication, do the research together with somebody who knows the culture. The other thing is to have a cultural expert to be your consultant. You can hire them as your consultant. You can hire somebody as a research assistant, and their capacity is cultural orientation. I did that for my recent dissertation in qualitative research because I was going to do research all over the Philippines, from the north to the south. And I knew that I was going to deal with the different cultures. And so I had two cultural experts to give me orientation, what to expect. And of course, this is where member check comes in, when you can do it at two different levels. One level would be to get maybe three experts who participate in the study. Say, okay, I want you to look at the whole report. And you know that they are usually the cultural experts, they tend to be either people who really studied culture or the older folks, people who are in their 50s, 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Those will be perfect to guide in the cultural orientation, and they will be able to capture certain things that you cannot capture. Back to you, Dr. Gomez.
Thank you, Sir Safari. We have another question. For those of us who report our research in English when the data collection occurred in another language, how can we ensure that we are accurately representing our participants' experiences expressed in language nuances in our final report?
I would say that if you know both the language of your participants, that means that's where you interviewed, and then you know English, that's where you're going to publish. I'm not too much worried about that because you are in the best position to communicate their voices. But if you were conducting the interview with their mother tongue and you're not really that good in their culture, then again, you will want to use the strategies that I have just talked about with the question that came from Dr. Talili, where you will want multiple eyes to look at your reports, at your report before you publish that, and making sure that the member check is done by experts. And as well, I mean, peer review, you can actually do a peer review, which is one of the approaches we do in the qualitative research before you submit that. And here we're not talking about the peer review of the methodology, we're talking about the peer review of the interpretation of your data and even the cultural nuances to make sure that they were captured, including also the member check before you submit your report.
Okay, Dr. Safari, we can entertain one more question. This is the question is, in multilingual context, how can we best triangulate participants' intended meanings through member checking, peer validation, or cultural consultation, and which do you consider most reliable?
I would say all the above. All the above. I think it depends on your context, because in some contexts you can do some of those things, and in some contexts, ideally, the more you do, the better. But will you do all of them? No. I think it really varies from one study to another, and it varies from the size of the study to another. The one that I did, where I did the cultural orientation, is because it was a whole dissertation, and I had 45 participants because it was a grounded theory. And so it was a chance I was not willing to take because the stakes were very high for that study. And so I think it depends on the context where you are. It depends on the size of the study, the complexity of the study, the cultural complexity of the study, because some of the studies don't really require too much. But if you're doing ethnography, for example, you know that you will really deal with a lot of cultural issues. If you're dealing with a linguistic study, language education and things like that, most likely you will need that. If you're dealing with issues that are very sensitive. Probably you will need that. And so I think all those different factors come into play when you're deciding what you are going to do.
Hey, thank you very much, Dr. Safarin. As much as we would like to entertain another question, with such limited time, you can probably contact Dr. Safari, email him. He can just be reached by an email so to ask further questions about the presentation. So, Dr. Wambaleka, thank you very much for sharing your time and your expertise. I'm pretty sure that we have learned a lot from your presentation, even if it was just for a short period of time. So thank you also to the participants for coming and attending the webinar. Your attendance has made this webinar a successful one. So please look forward for another interesting webinar that will be posted again. The webinar is conducted every first Thursday of the month. So with that, this webinar session ends. Goodbye for now. Goodbye for now, everyone. Keep safe and thank you for your attendance. Bye.